today. She is the only broadcaster inside the Senate building. And Courtney, I wonder, how are people feeling where you are? You told us earlier that actually the demonstration was being dealt with very calmly, and it was all, from your point of view, it seemed to be under control. I just wonder what feelings are like where you are.
Well, nerves are fraught here, and you can see there are several other broadcasters with me here inside the Senate. But while we're in the Senate Rotunda building, what's happening through the tunnels right at the U.S. Capitol in the joint session is that members of Congress are being told to put on gas masks. Now, it's very important to really be clear on the size of the crowd here. Hundreds, not tens of thousands, have been trying to breach into the U.S. Capitol building, and they have. It's the well-known Rotunda building. Now, we're all connected through tunnels and everything underground, so congressmen and women can move freely without having to be on the street or need some kind of security detail or have to be face-to-face with the protesters. The thing is, a small group of protesters have gotten inside the Capitol building. Now, they have to be cleared out peacefully. It's really important that security doesn't do anything untoward, because they don't want to use excessive force. They don't want to use tear gas. They don't want to use fire hoses on these groups. It's just about 500 yards away outside, but like I said, we're inside, and I can see outside watching our stairs to make sure that there's no breach here, which so far there hasn't been. They're really going at the joint session of Congress, trying to disrupt what is the last final ceremonial step to confirm that Joe Biden is the 46th president of the United States. Vice President Mike Pence saying he's a lover of the Constitution and the Founding Fathers, that in no way in American history has any vice president used any authorization to contest an election at this point, and in no way would he. That goes directly against President Trump, who is tweeting right now that Mike Pence should have done what he wanted him to do, which was negate this election. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell speaking not only to his Republicans, but to the American public, saying the voters have decided, and they have, by popular vote, by electoral college vote. Senators, men and women, congressmen, House of Representatives, all there today, Nancy Pelosi, these well-known figures, trying to make sure they're COVID safe, they have the security and they're safe. Meanwhile, right in the House building, we've heard that there has been reportedly a pipe bomb. The D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser is insisting that at 6 p.m. there's a lockdown here in the District of Columbia. There's a curfew being ordered from 6 p.m., which is only a couple of hours from now, until 6 a.m. to make sure that these groups of people, these fringe groups, these small groups, but effective groups in terms of civil unrest, and really they're creating a really scary atmosphere here. It's being amplified by the President of the United States, who has lost this election. He even said that he would come here from the White House, which is not too far a walk. I don't think the Secret Service will let him do that, but he's sending his message out to these people, among them the far-right group, the Proud Boys. If you remember, he was criticized widely for saying in one of the debates against then former Vice President Joe Biden, saying, Proud Boys, stand down and stand back. And they took that as a signal for them to come here, to continue to support President Trump's absolutely factually incorrect statements that he did not win the election. He says he cannot use the word lose. He refuses to do it. He refuses to concede. But no matter what, you have Congress upholding the Constitution. You have Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, united inside right now, under siege with all sorts of security breaches happening right now, trying to make sure this constitutional process is upheld, this revered constitutional process. The Vice President calling it the love of the Constitution is continuing. But President Trump in no way is upholding that, in no way is respecting it, and he is calling for protesters, and he is saying that Mike Pence is not doing what he wanted, which would be a direct breach of the Constitution. Vice President Mike Pence saying it's not in his control. Senate Majority Leader, again, saying it's not going to happen. But what is happening right now is a very tense and scary situation for all of the joint session of Congress, and also visually amplified this absolute civil unrest right in the nation's capital, right in the heart of Congress, right in the heart of the different levers of power, while we have a president sitting inside the White House telling fringe groups to contest an election that was won free and fairly by Joe Biden.
And Courtney, as we look at these scenes of protesters on the steps of Capitol Hill, we should agree with you that they do look calm. We can see people waving flags. Some of them say "Stop the steal," "Stop the steal," which is one of the slogans that Donald Trump mentioned in his press conference that he gave just a few hours ago. We can see some with Donald Trump's name on, some with the American flag. But as yet, it does seem quite busy, but quite calm. Nevertheless, in just a couple of weeks, we are expecting Joe Biden's inauguration. Does the spectre of something like this happening then hang over that event?
Well, unfortunately, there's a black pall hanging over all of America, and it's called COVID, which is raging. I mean, they're having issues with oxygen and being able to distribute it in Los Angeles. So what you're going to see when President Biden is sworn in, you're going to see a lot of it virtual. You're going to see most of the inauguration. You're not going to see people walking up in that procession that we've always seen and this handing down of power. You're not going to see, most likely, President Trump welcoming soon-to-be President Biden and his family here. What you're going to see is President Trump refusing to concede, along with his children and his family. He might leave early. It's unclear. You're going to see soon-to-be President Biden joined by Kamala Harris and her first husband, as they're saying, to take the oath and not have usually there are parties here and the whole town is filled with celebrations of democracy. None of that's going to happen. You're going to have a virtual celebration, quiet, and you're going to see on that day Joe Biden probably some executive orders. He's starting with 100 days of imploring people to wear masks, 100 days of getting these vaccinations out, trying to get people's jobs on track, trying to get the economy back on track. It's a runaway train at this point. Yes, the stock market, what President Trump always says is doing well. About 35% of Americans are in the stock market. The numbers of unemployment and chronic employment, all of these things, Joe Biden will accept it. You'll not see crowds necessarily unless President Trump stages another rally, which he could do. We weren't expecting it today. And then over the last couple of days, it became very nerve-wracking as we realized that it was going to get worse and worse. The D.C. mayor called on all Washingtonians not to come downtown today or yesterday. Many people stayed at home. So it's only essential workers after 6 p.m. here, including the media. We are essential workers. We do have our permits. But we are monitoring a fluid situation of civil unrest directly as a direct result of President Trump telling his supporters to do so, telling them to not agree with the vice president, not agree with the Republican Party, not agree with the outcome of an election. And just note, the numbers speak for themselves. He has lost 62 lawsuits on every level here in America, including the Supreme Court, refusing to listen to his lawsuit because they deemed that the election was fair. So did outgoing Attorney General Bill Barr before he resigned, with just a little while left to go here in the administration. You have a president alone, except for these supporters, many of them fringe, and this small group, as you said, sitting peacefully on the steps of the Capitol. It's also worried that they will break off into different neighborhoods. They might clash with Black Lives Matter. We saw that last night. So we are waiting to see what happens tonight, but people will be arrested that are on the streets of Washington, D.C. because of this curfew.
And Courtney, you mentioned just now that President Trump had started tweeting. He took to Twitter to call on the protesters to stay peaceful. We're just going to have a look at that tweet. He said, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful." So ostensibly, President Trump then trying to diffuse things.
Well, will he be able to? Because he just spoke to a rally of thousands, telling them to walk here and that he would join them to contest what is a process according to the Constitution, and they have breached the compound of the U.S. Capitol. They are in the Hall of Statues. There are congressmen and women that have been told to don gas masks. So many would say this is a dollar short, day late, but at least he's saying it. Now he's saying it, maybe I cannot get in the head of the president, but I can tell you people do listen to him, his supporters do listen to him. So if he's saying for them to be peaceful, they will most likely listen to the president. But who's not listening to the president is the vice president, is the Senate Majority Leader, and all members of Congress that are making sure that Joe Biden will be certified as the next president of the United States, even though this sitting president refuses to acknowledge the outcome.
And Courtney, we're still looking at those pictures as the protesters are still on the steps of the Capitol, still looking fairly peaceful from what I can make out. But there is, as you suggest, the spectre of potentially violence this evening.
Less than 3 hours to go to the curfew, and it's wintertime, and it's COVID raging, so there will be arrests if people are still outside. They have to be peaceful. No one wants to see a repeat of what happened, tear gassing of peaceful protests in Lafayette Park, which became Black Lives Matter Plaza. That was done when President Trump walked to St. John's Church to hold up that Bible. I was reporting right down the street as a Black Hawk helicopter was flying over. They do not want to see a show of force against any American protester, so they are peaceful. President Trump is speaking to them by Twitter, saying remain peaceful. But I'm sure much law enforcement really wants to see them go home before they have to start rounding them up or contain them. It remains to be seen what happens at 6 p.m. There were a lot of arrests last night. The other day, as the leader of the Proud Boys actually came into the district, he was arrested because he defaced public property at church and a Black Lives Matter banner when he was last here. He also had ammunition on his person. He has been released, but he is not allowed in the District of Columbia until he's actually going to face a judge in June. So we'll see what happens overnight. As like I said, less than 3 hours from now. That doesn't mean the joint session of Congress is over in the next 3 hours, though, so you have to be mindful of that. Again, they can move underground around here and have been told to do so. So security in there will be tight. It's still very tenuous right now. It's still fraught. Nerves are running high, even though we're seeing pictures of peacefulness. This is something that everyone has worried about, the lone rogue actor, the fringe vigilantes, and that's what everyone is on high alert for, from Secret Service to private details to the U.S. Capitol Police, the D.C. Metro Police to National Guardsmen, all and women, all trying to keep the peace. And these protesters came in at the direct request of the President of the United States to, as you said, stop the steal is their slogan. There was no steal. The vote is done. It is a deal, and Joe Biden will become president regardless of what happens. So less than 3 hours to go until that curfew now.
Courtney, stay with us for the moment. We're just going to show everyone a still image of inside the chamber. And what that image shows is a policeman arresting someone using a gun as part of the arresting process. We can't see that image yet, but perhaps an indication of the kind of mood that is going on now inside the Capitol building.
Right, and the chatter on fringe social media groups like Parler was that people should try to bring guns into the District of Columbia. There's no open carry law here. You are not allowed to carry a gun on federal property. So there have been expectations that people who tried to bring in firearms would be arrested. That has been a fear. In Virginia, right across the water, it's different gun laws. A lot of the protesters that respect and revere President Trump also revere the Second Amendment. And so their idea of the don't tread on me, the right to bear arms is also embedded in their belief system. So there has been a fear that people would try to bring in guns into the District of Columbia. And like I said, they're illegal on federal property. A lot of the federal grounds here, the National Mall, where even the Ellipse, that's all federal property. Here is federal property. So most of the district a lot of the district, especially downtown, is federal property. All illegal to carry a firearm. Anyone that has one could be arrested and prosecuted.
So clearly the Senate session has been halted halted. What are the prospects for the resumption of that?
It's going to take longer for them to finish this process that's supposed to be ceremonial. It's going to take longer for the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, to oversee this as less of a decider and more of as a master of ceremonies. It's going to take longer for members of Congress to be able to finish this process because of this civil unrest. It's going to happen regardless of what's happening today. There's no way of turning back this tide. There's nothing that President Trump can do. He is no longer president on January 20th by the Constitution. He'll never have to concede. There's no law that says the president actually has to admit that he lost. He can say that for the rest of his lifetime. He can have amplification of supporters in any way. He just won't be having it from the White House after January 20th.
And as we carry on looking at pictures of protesters, pro-President Trump protesters on the steps of the Capitol building, we are also going to talk about a tweet that President Trump made earlier on that Vice President Mike Pence had the power to overturn the presidential election, but failed to do so. Twitter has flagged that tweet, and it says, Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones, which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth. So, Courtney, I don't know if you were aware of this tweet from President Trump, but it doesn't seem to be calming the situation down at all.
No, and we have a letter from Vice President Mike Pence who put this out, an official statement, and he made sure that his words would be echoed. So before President Trump's tweet, he said, as a student of history who loves the Constitution and reveres its framers, I do not believe the founders of our country intended to invest the vice president with unilateral authority to decide which electoral votes should be counted during the joint session of Congress. And no vice president in American history had ever asserted such authority. So the vice president put that statement out under his press office, making sure that the American public knows that the vice president does not believe at all in American history, in the past or in the future, that a vice president has the authorization to overturn this. So when President Trump is calling on him, saying he lacked the moral courage, Vice President Pence has already made his statement very clear that he reveres the framers of the Constitution, that he reveres American history, and as a student of that and a lover of the Constitution, this is why he's not doing President Trump's bidding. And that's very important. Also, there's one really big fact that I have to get out to you right now. 10 living defense secretaries, that's basically people in the federal government from the time of the Vietnam War straight through the forever wars. That's multiple generations of veterans and defense secretaries that have been spoken to by defense secretaries in a direct rebuke to their commander-in-chief, their current commander-in-chief, saying the election has been decided, it's time for America to move on. So when people throw around the word coup, the military isn't behind it. The military is no way behind President Trump's call that this election, the stop the steal or this election was fraudulent. Revered members on both Republican and Democratic side, top names like Dick Cheney, who organized this, made sure that this message was sent out to all of America, that the defense secretaries of all of these cabinets that have held such revered positions in no way believe this call that the vote was unfair. They believe that the voters have decided, and it's time for America to move on. So you're not going to see any unilateral moves among the military. That's why you're seeing a small group of people that are following their person, their President Trump, as his supporters. But it's not a groundswell of people that believe that somehow democracy was upended. You'll have conspiracy theorists. You'll have people that believe that President Trump might have been robbed of it. But when Congress speaks, when the Vice President speaks, when the Attorney General says it was fair and then leaves office before the inauguration, just a few weeks before that, when he was side-by-side lockstep with President Trump during the Mueller investigation and all of that, he is losing his last bit of enablers, as supporters. Nobody is standing around President Trump right now in terms of top offices of the United States, down to his vice president, down to all of the military commanders except his acting Secretary of Defense, who's saying that President Trump is in the right now.
Okay, Courtney Kealy, for now, many thanks again. Let's just bring you a reminder of what we are looking at this